Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all at our today's public event, which is focusing on digital detoxification in the online public sphere. I'm Sándor Orbán, director of the Center for Independent Journalism. The center is organizing this roundtable discussion today. The contamination of public discourse in the internet has been causing headaches to many, especially to those who care about democratic values and the standards of public interest journalism. And our center has been involved in several projects dealing with this topic. And one of the most prominent projects we are running in this area is called Get the Trolls Out. And it's a multi-country project, and we are now hosting a project meeting here. And we decided to use this opportunity and the expertise to share the experience and organize this roundtable discussion. And we also, I have to also tell you that this project is run by the Media Diversity Institute London, and MDI has been one of our most important and long-standing partners. It's hard to believe, but we have been working together since 1996. I don't want to count the years. And we also wanted to use this opportunity to ask Milica Pesic, the director of the Media Diversity Institute, to share her thoughts about this topic, as she's an expert on media diversity and very much involved in many other initiatives, not only like this. Also, let me mention that we have other partners as well, and this discussion is part of a series of events which is supported by the Association of Hungarian Journalists, and during the discussion we will hear also how the association seeks to tackle hateful content in online media. So we will hear about that as well. Plus, our other very important partner today is the Goethe Institute. It has been a tradition now for several years that the Goethe Institute contributes to two of our events annually. And we will also hear about the project of the Goethe Institute, what they are running in 4 Visegrad countries. And I think it's a media literacy project, but it has a very important component which is focusing on content and hateful speech. And finally, there will be one other project which will be mentioned. This is our initiative, and it's run by the center, and we are dealing with linguistic tools in language. So altogether, I think we will hear about some good examples how to tackle hateful content on the internet. And first we will hear Milica. After that, there will be a panel discussion moderated by Bea Bodrogi, who is the project leader of the Get the Trolls Out project here in Hungary. But first, let me give the floor to Milica to share her thoughts, your thoughts about the topic of today's conference.
Thank you first for coming. The weather is of a kind everyone would like to be somewhere where it's cool and you can have good cold beer. But I hope we can all do that after this. I want to thank Sándor and the Center for being fantastic partners for more than 20 years. And actually, the very first reporting diversity program in Europe started with the center here in Budapest. So this is quite historic kind of event for us to be back to Budapest, even though we've been doing many things between that start and now. I want to apologize if I'm telling you something you already have been very familiar with. You've already forgotten that's how much you've known it, but I'm here to share with you what MDI, Media Diversity Institute, has been doing over the last couple of years, or how we will be dealing with all these issues around hate speech and fake news, disinformation related to this. And we've been learning a lot from other people and trying to not only learning but also applying what others are doing, because these are quite important times for all of us. So when Sándor asked me to talk about detox of the digital sphere. My first thought was digital detox, a term everyone is using, you know, to try to cleanse from obsessive, you know, use of all these gadgets. But knowing Shandor, he always has his thoughts are always a step forward, so I knew there would be more than that, and when we talked, I realized that we are still thinking the same, and it is, no, we don't want to close our gadgets in aim to cleanse ourselves. No, we want actually to do more, that actually the space we are all using, that is used in a more civilized way, in more democratic way, with more respect. And that's something what MDI has been doing for more than 20 years, trying on one side to fight for freedom of expression as the right for all citizens, regardless our race, ethnicity, religion, gender, physical, mental abilities, sexual orientation, language, whatever makes us different from each other, right to express ourselves, but at the same time to make sure that no citizen is really being discriminated against based on that same very basic human rights, human right. And it's not easy, it has never been easy. I am originally from Serbia, and those of you who are my generation probably still remember the wars in the Balkans and how much those wars were around ethnicity and religion, and how media were used then to incite hatred towards the others. When I left my beloved Balkans, I thought I moved to a boring but well-organized Britain, where I can have a decent life and not constantly emotionally react to what is happening around me. And I was right till 3 years ago. Then we had referendum, Brexit, and I hardly see any difference between how my beloved people in the Balkans behave and what I'm seeing in Britain right now. So we see this toxic discourse which is present not only in digital media, not only in cyberspace, it's present everywhere around us. And we see the link between what is popularly called fake news, but as you know, it's neither news nor fake. It's completely invented stuff very often. And it's very often fake news, disinformation linked to some of diversity categories, particularly around religion, because religion is one of the most sensitive diversity issues. If you report on agriculture and you make a mistake, you apologize, you move on. If you report on any kind of religion issues, relations, and you make a mistake, it can cost lives. And that's why we have been so much engaged in this field of fake news, hate speech, or I mentioned here, as you can see, that we are still struggling with terminology. Some people use term harmful speech, some dangerous, hate, or toxic. They all have different definitions, but everyone agrees that there is no such a thing as internationally recognized definition. And that's one of the problems, because it's difficult to define it, it's difficult to put it under regulations, because what might be hurtful to you is not to me, and vice versa. Some go even further, like Stephen Ward, whose book, Ethical Journalism in Populist Era, I just read. He's talking about different stages or levels of hate. He talks about strong speech, which he defines as having strong negative opinions about someone. Then extreme speech, it's it's speech used by people who want to express their negative views publicly, and then hate speech, which in his view goes further and uses threats against others and trying through language to dehumanize the others. You probably have your own definition on the issue, but I wanted, before I go further, just to share with you a clip or trailer from the series I haven't seen at all, and I'm probably among really, really small minority. Oh, technical, sorry. Oh, just a second. Everything is in Hungarian here, and sorry. I will, sorry. You better stay with me, Andras. You got the idea, did you? I'll stop here.
Everything you did.
If I could do that. Just stay here, please. Thank you. Why I wanted to share this with you, because there is now a petition signed only in America already by more than 1 million people asking for get the Game of Thrones to the end to be changed, because they are not happy with the ending, or you are not happy with the ending. Have you petitioned? And when I saw the petition and comments by some of the people who were in the series, who said, you know, make your own series if you don't like this one, I just wondered, could you imagine someone asking at the time of when Shakespeare was still around, can you change the end? Where are we going with this culture where we are so fed by the things we like that we actually can't accept anymore that what someone else is doing should be different from what we think they should be doing or we should be doing. It's what many call a bubble or echo chamber or different names, but when internet appeared for us in Media Diversity Institute was like, oh, finally there is a space for those who are excluded, who are marginalized, who have no voice in public sphere, particularly in the media. Here is the space to express themselves. But it is turning more and more in grouping people around one idea, one thought, and with the possibility not to get out of the chamber and look for other views and other options. Someone said recently, a public health crisis in all its complexity. That's how they talk about the bubble and the social media. So it's there, it's just going to grow, and we have to find a way to immunize ourselves from what is happening, instead of just, you know, detox ourselves by turning off our little gadgets. Why we are talking about all this, and I don't think I'm making drama when I say what I've heard so many times other people saying over the last couple of years, it's democracy which is in serious trouble. And for my generation to see that, you know, particularly we people who were born behind, you know, Iron Curtain, who have appreciated democracy so much now to see how it is melting, and those who are supposed to actually keep it primarily and build it and strengthen it, they are becoming worse and worse. And I always say, I always use this Balkan term, fish stinks from its head downwards. So we can make all kind of efforts, but while it is coming from the top, and we journalists, and that's my professional background, we have to report on that, then we cannot easily get rid of this. We just had the European Parliament, European elections. You've been all aware of the results, though I think, you know, what you expected in Hungary, it seems you got better, slightly better than what you pessimistically expected. There is this study recently published by this American institute where people in America, ahead of the elections there, are seeing fake news as a bigger threat to the country than terrorism, illegal immigration, violent crime, or racism. So tyrants in waiting, as Plato used to call, you know, populists, are around us. And I assume all of us who are here are thinking similarly, or if I'm wrong, if there is anyone who is completely differently thinking than me, then I will be very pleased, because it's more and more echo chamber at the events around these topics. Just people who think the same, people who, as we say, converted ones, gather and talk, and we don't have any communication, any dialogue with those who don't think like us. Which leads me to talk about how this democratic space shrinks not only online but offline as well. My colleagues from Get the Trolls Out will talk more about it, how legacy media, traditional media, or professional journalism, to call it, are actually very often feeding cyberspace or social media in particular with the way they report on certain issues. On one side, you have media organizations such as Washington Post, who they have now their own debunking kind of program, or BBC has their own unit dealing just with the disinformation. They started talking about what they call sandwich journalism. So no more just here is a report from this event, but let me package the report between an introduction which will give you an idea or prepare you or direct you how to read what follows. And then after the report, there is additional explanation. So it's not anymore give me the news first and then you comment, but it's being mixed for the sake of helping the consumers of the media understand better how to read messages. I want to show you one of our favorite tabloids in Britain we've been fighting with for years, Daily Mail. And this is one of the examples how legacy media feed hate or disinformation or both in social media. I hope this time I will press the right thing. This is, yep. There was a story in Daily Mail last week that this young woman who was raped as a child and as a teenager and suffered serious depression and asked for euthanasia, which is legal in the Netherlands. This is a story from the Netherlands. She was refused, but for some reason, Daily Mail decided to publish a story saying that she was euthanized, and the woman who posted this tweet, she immediately, the moment she saw the story on Twitter, she checked, and within 10 minutes she knew, because she spoke Dutch, she knew that Dutch media reported what really happened. But by the time she found out that, within an hour, the post was shared more than 1 million times. So too late to easily debunk the information which came from legacy media and was spread massively within 1 hour. There is another example, Andras, here I am back to, this is really silly thing, how do I do, we are back, okay. Sorry, this is an example, Iran Desinfo. It's a platform funded by State Department, which is supposed to actually debunk Iranian propaganda, but somehow ended chasing mainly Iranian dissidents who live in Canada and America. And last week, a journalist, American journalist, woman of Iranian background, decided to find out what's going on, and she found out that they are mainly focused on chasing wrong people. So she contacted State Department for a statement. They gave her a statement and they blocked the funding. So sometimes a cooperation between donors and implementers works well. And as the photos show you here, these are pictures from different newspapers, some of them from a study we did a couple of years ago reporting on ethnicity and religion in Europe, where we found how much cartoons and humor is used to really spread religious-based discrimination of all kinds. And I'm sure that my colleagues from Get the Trolls Out will talk more about it. For us, New Zealand and what happened in Christchurch is a kind of a milestone when we talk about not only journalism, but also what's happening on a political level. As some people said when it happened, it's same tune, just different venues. It happened in Norway, it happened in Brussels, it happened in London, it happened in Paris. So this is yet another of the same kind of tunes. What was different in case of New Zealand, that both the policymakers, the government, and the media reacted quite differently from previous events in the towns and countries I mentioned. This, what happened in Christchurch, led some analysts or experts on the issue, such as Julia Ebner, who works with the Institute for Social Dialogue, Strategic Dialogue, thanks Lydia. In her book, The Rage, she's talking about the equivalence between jihad terror and violent white supremacism. And that's what some would not yet agree upon, but experts are seeing similarities and comparing far-right or alt-right responses to what ISIS has been doing, like even talking about mimicking, as I mentioned here. And some studies show that far-right extremism is growing right now faster than Islamic extremism. I saw on CNN the other day this discussion on the same issue, and 3 out of 4 experts talked about how white supremacy should be treated as terrorism, as Islamic terrorism is treated. Well, this was my topic given by Sándor. What can we do? And I added, what can we do together? Because it's too serious to work only through one channel or only with one kind of stakeholders. Also, we've seen these kind of things before. I mentioned Balkans, but there are many other places, and whenever I see any of these things happening, I go back to Hannah Arendt, and I strongly recommend to the generation which is not familiar yet with what she's written about totalitarian regime, about minorities, about misuse of power, about relationship between truth, lies and power, is so relevant today, and it's worth reading and comparing. And if there is a minimum we want to ask for, then it is to be civil. That's what we owe to each other, and that's what is becoming harder and harder everywhere, starting with Britain, which used to look as a very quiet and structured and stable society. And we need solidarity in resilience towards all these issues. And what we've been doing through MDI, we've been trying to work with different stakeholders, and I listed all of them here, and I'll say a couple of words about each of them. Policymakers, governments, decision makers, they are constantly trying to find a solution for what's happening on all these platforms. But these platforms are global, whereas governments are trying to find solutions just for their countries. And it's a mismatch which is not working yet. And there is particular difference between the US and Europe. The US, which bases everything on on First Amendment, and then Europe, which bases everything on the right to equality. So libertarian and approach on one side, and then European way, which is very much based on laws, on different documents, but nothing is working yet well. The good news is the one you all know, that finally Facebook admitted that there is a problem, that there is responsibility on their side, but no one is coming yet with any kind of solution, so how to deal with it. Different countries, I don't think we have time now, but if there is time, we can talk like what Canada is doing, what Germany, France, Finland, New Zealand, everyone is trying, but it's mainly to regulate. The problem is that if the governments are regulating this kind of issues, we know that many governments are not very democratic, that they might use it against their citizens. So to let the governments regulate it, only governments, it's too risky. To let global platforms regulate it, it's also risky, because everything they do is to monetize what they are doing. So it would be silly to expect from them to close a tweet account of someone who is bringing millions of people to that account, thus advertising it and so on and so forth. I mentioned already fish stinks from its head downwards, and Washington Post debunking unit, the debunking unit found out that since Trump got into power, he tweeted 2,000 tweets related to this particular issue. By 2018, 1,700 false or misleading claims, about 6 per day. 50% of them hurtful or disparaging of others. So no one will close, of course, his tweet account for one or the other reason, but mainly financial reason. So we believe that supporting conventional journalism, particularly what we call good journalism, meaning journalism which serves the public, and Shandor, you use the term, which is public interest now, so a media which are still really there to serve the public, to provide space for a dialogue, to provide fair, accurate, balanced information, and to keep the authorities accountable. That's what we need to support as much as we could do. We are aware that conventional, legacy, traditional media are not anymore gatekeepers. We know that, we are aware of that. We know that social media often impose agendas to traditional, conventional media. But there is still hope. And one of the latest examples was just a couple of weeks ago in your neighborhood, Ibiza-gate. So without the Deutsche Zeitung and Der Spiegel, we would not know what happened in Ibiza and how people who were sitting in Austrian government behaved. And, the result was there. There was, Mr. Kurz had to resign. So there is still strength in well, sorry, he didn't resign, he was voted, what's it say? Confidence. Sorry. Please correct me. See, debunking. Example of debunking, thank you. So we are trying, when working with the media, to help them learn how to deal with the toxic discourse. And example, again, which comes from New Zealand, and I'd really suggest, look what they did when Christchurch happened. The first thing their prime minister did, she called it the very same morning, she called it terrorism. British media, including BBC, waited till 5 o'clock in the afternoon to use the word terrorism. Had the perpetrator was a Muslim, had been Muslim, the things would be probably different. Not probably, we have examples from British media behaving different way. What was also quite different in case of New Zealand, the media there focused on victims, not on the attacker. There were British media, again, Daily Mail, who published on the front page the pictures, the photos of the perpetrator as a 4-year-old boy, very angelic face, like how could that be, this angelic child suddenly killing. So the focus was on victims. There was solidarity in the media, like news bulletins, presenters were welcoming, opening news bulletins by saying Salam Alaikum, some, including Prime Minister, she covered herself. And they practiced what Dr. Verika Rupar from Auckland University in New Zealand, with whom we've been collaborating for like 15 years, called journalism of care. So choose the words how you report. Talk to those who've been affected by the tragedy. Focus on how communities are affected. Something we can all learn from. Some of the examples how to deal with the issue, I just put some examples. Ethical Journalism Network has a whole guide a video guide how to deal with hate speech, 5 rules, how you test whether you publish and you don't. Then Stephen Ward also had some guidance for journalists. These are the publications in which experts MDI has been working with, came with the recommendations how can journalists deal with these issues. I already talked about global platforms. I want just to put a similarity sign between social media and tabloids. The editorial motto of tabloids, particularly in Britain, is what bleeds, it leads. And you can see the same motto in these global platforms. The more blood, the more viewers, users, the more advertising. Finally, what organizations such as MDI are doing to increase the immunity of citizens. We have right now 7, 8 projects through which we are working on what we call all this work media information literacy. So either we work with media, helping journalists to get the right way how to report on these issues, or with the academics, we have a master course, media and diversity, or we work with civil society organizations. We talk about, how to critically think about media, or how to produce content which is fair, balanced, accurate, inclusive. And we are just one of, there are 15,000 projects right now in Europe dealing with media information literacy. Whether that would turn into a quality, meaning that we will be less, that we will be more resistant to misinformation, hate speech, and these two linked together in a poisonous weapon, it remains to be seen. I'm sure that my colleagues will talk about other actors such as Stop Funding Hate projects, LICRA, our colleagues from France, what they are doing using legal action. Everything is there to raise the resistance towards misinformation and hate speech. And this little graph, I don't dare to make it bigger to spoil the whole thing. But Finland, which has introduced informal and formal media information literacy, the level of resistance is 76%, where Macedonia is at the bottom with only, I can't see it to be honest with you, but you can check it for yourself, but it's very, very low percentage. And I'll end with 2 quotes, one coming from Jacinda Ardern, who is one of my favorites right now, because she recognized and said it publicly what no political leader sees as a quality, an advantage, and it's diversity, which is there, which is here, and it's here to stay. So she talked about how many ethnic groups, how many languages they have in New Zealand, and that this is their richness. And I'll end with Angela Merkel. She recently received an honorary doctorate at Harvard University, and this is what she said to the students: tear down walls of ignorance and narrow-mindedness, for nothing has to stay as it is. And this is in particular important for millennials, because they are the massive users of social media. My generation people are very much still with the traditional media. But this is something we all have to keep in mind. That's what I had to share with you. Now it's your turn. Thank you.